So my demo today is on the Simon Hope wood turning jig. It started years ago when I think it was Cliff Chisholm talked about using these. I'm an engineer Navy engineer by trade, and these kicked my butt. They didn't have YouTube that demoed how to use these until much farther along, and I was going way too fast. And they ended up in the drawer where things go that you buy that are shiny and then frustrate you. So they stayed there. So first slide. So what I saw recently, and I'll get into that, was a threading jig. As an engineer, that really appealed to me. Next slide. Here we go. So what we're going to talk about is why I bought it, where to buy it, preparing the box. And preparing the box, we'll talk about it a little bit, but these are basically the easiest way to get started at it. Perhaps not wood as hard as this. Maple turns really nice. And I never got really good threads with it, but maple works pretty good for learning. So we're going to talk about preparing the box, setting up the jig, putting the jig on there and making sure that it's at the right height, and then cutting the threads. Cutting the threads there's no art to it. It's really, this guy, Simon Hope, is an engineer. It's very sharp. Next. And then some sources of info, and then I brought some examples of completed ones. And I've got some pictures of completed ones. So in here, you can tell that you get a cardboard box, and it's got great instructions in here. They are not like your classic Chinese tools where the grammar's not too good and you sort of have to figure it out. So what I did was first thing I did was I put it in a wooden box because I knew I'd be wanting to take it places, move it in and out of the drawers, things like that. The cardboard just won't hold up to it. Next slide. So, saw a YouTube video by Ronald Kane. That's where I got downwind of it. And I reached out to this guy, Simon Hope. He had some videos also of him using his own jig, and he had a contact point on it. And I asked him where, I could get it, things like that. He told me that you can get one. So at that point, it met the criteria for buying. As a wood turner, I have very few criteria for buying new tools. And that's the three of them right here. So I went to Black Forest, which is up in Canada, and I got one of these sent to me. I don't know why, but Simon says it's not available in the US, and his other tools aren't available in the US.
So they don't ship?
Say again?
They don't ship?
They do ship from Canada. But he could not ship it to the US from Great Britain. I was going to try to buy one from him, thinking I could get a discount, but nope. So had to buy it from Black Forest in Canada. There's another place in Canada that you can also buy it, but they were the closest. All right, preparing the box. This is the metamorphosis of a threaded box. Starts off pretty much square. You guys have probably done boxes before that have turned non-threaded boxes. Turn it round, put a tenon on both ends. It's very important that the tenon be flat at 90 degrees. This surface right here is really important that it be 90 degrees. Because if you get that, with any kind of shimmer on it, it won't sit in the chuck correctly. And then the two ends, when you do separate this thing, they won't meet up correctly, as demonstrated in one of these mistakes, how not to do. So this is what you try for. You want to get a tenon, you want to get a female end, the box part, that's about either 2/3 of the length or 3/4 of the length. And then you can hollow both the top and the bottom. But here's how you don't hollow the top and the bottom. You don't use the same Forstner bit to hollow the top and the bottom. So I was doing a Christmas turning, and I knew I was going to be able to turn a whole bunch of them. So I just used the same Forstner bit. And if the reason's not obvious, the female threads go in this one, and then the male threads have to be big enough to go in those female threads and yet have about 1/4 of an inch behind them to give them some rigidity. If you use the same size Forstner bit, that 1/2 inch or 1/4 of an inch doesn't exist. So you can do it where you hollow both. You can see that this one is much smaller than that diameter. And that gives you that 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch for the male threads. Back to the slide. So the second piece cannot be sized for threads until the first one is completely threaded, because you have to measure to set the male threads. All right? Next slide. Each piece must be left in its chuck. So what I always do is I use 2 chucks, and I just dedicate them, keep them, you know, the female in this one, male in this one. As I said, you can use the Forstner bits, but you can't use the same size. And then don't drill full depth. When you drill these things, the Forstner bit leaves a divot in the bottom, which, if you care about that, you want to remove it, you know, with a scraper or something like that. The sides, the Forstner bit's really good because the sides have to be parallel to the axis of the top, right? If you go in there and you try to do it with a scraper or something like that, and you've got a taper on this thing, when you cut your threads, the threads aren't going to be straight. They're going to be tapered. So they won't go on well on the male threads. So Forstner bit, not full depth. It's good for the linearity of the sides. Male threads cannot be deeper than the female threads. You end up with a ring. So there you can see those little short female threads and these long male threads. Now, it's an opportunity for design. What could you do? You could put a ring right there and make that, you know, like it was deliberate. Some of the other lessons learned were, I reached out to Simon Hope after I turned this one. Is that up there? Yeah. Look at the threads on that. They are destroyed, and they're destroyed the whole way around. And he said there was 2 reasons for that. One, I can't use CA glue. CA glue, you want to use it while you're cutting. In his videos, he puts it on all the time. I can't because I've become sensitized to CA glue, so I don't use it. I did use Minwax. The bad thing about the Minwax is it takes 24 hours to dry. So you cut the female, or you cut the male into the 2 halves, and then you have to dip them. And that's 24 hours later. So this lesson learned here was, don't use the hardest wood you can come up with to try to learn on. Yeah, it's very hard. I think this is, yeah, no, it's not walnut, it's Bacote. I think it's Bacote. Yeah. And then this is a demonstration. I don't know if you can see it very well, but on this side, it's sticking, this side is proud, sticking out, and on this side, the other piece is sticking out because these 2 were not parallel. When I cut them, I didn't make sure that they were parallel and put them in the chucks. so they weren't straight in the chucks. And you end up with this. And to prove that, I did it again with this little one right here. And I thought, well, I'll just sand it. But that doesn't work because when you sand it, well, now you've got flat here, but over here, it's really big. So you can see that if you don't do it right the first time, sanding will not help. That's the lesson learned there. And then the last thing we're going to talk about is, I don't know if you can see the little tick marks in here, but the tick marks are to get these grains aligned. When I initially started, this was the first one. These were how they lined up. And then what I ended up with is all the grains line up now. All right, and I'll show you how to do that at the end of the demo. So this is just like any other turning that you guys have done. You can come in here and measure the angles and get a square, a ruler in there, or you can do it with your eye, and basically your eyes are really good at finding the center of things. And so just like that, you will find this. All right, so what do you guys like to turn with when you're rounding things out? You got choices like roughing gouge. That works pretty good. You got the classic skew, which works pretty good for rounding out this. Spindle work. You can use a spindle gouge. I like the Searls no catch skew, which I invented. So all I did was I took the heel and the foot of this thing. And it's really easy to sharpen. All you do is you angle it like this and roll it from side to side. And it doesn't catch. It doesn't stay sharp very long, but it does not catch. I'm selling them. I'm selling them if you want one.
So it's a skew with a rounded.
No toe, no heel. Yeah. And no catches. Huh? Yeah. Yeah, when Rudy came here, when Rudy Lopez came here, he was demoing a skew, and I had to go home and make one. I have some M2 steel I bought years ago and had it hardened, and so I made one of his. This thing works like a champ. I'm not going to use it for here. We'll see if I'm able to talk as this. All right. If you're wondering why we've got a Laguna tool banjo on a jet lathe, we had to adapt it to make this demo work. Ray and Jay and Brett helped me make this thing work. So, all right, can you still hear me? Okay. One last little flat spot. It's a little rough. All right, and then what you want to do is you want to pick your end that you want to be the top, female side, and I do 1/3, yeah, 1/3 to 1/4. So we'll do it right around here, and this will be nice because it's got that blemish right there, which we'll try to realign. But first, we need to put the correct size tenons on each end before we cut the piece off in the middle. And what I use for tenons is either this, another M2 tool that works really nice, or a badan. Those of you that know what a badan is for, it's not really for making tenons as a scraper, but it works so nice. It's tapered on both sides. It's supposed to be used this way, and the French guys can do it. That is a catch waiting to happen as far as I'm concerned. So I put tenons on with this. All right, one of those tenons might be a little too small. Before we go on, I'm going to check that. So I don't know if you guys are aware, there's a Thursday meeting that we do every week. And a few weeks ago, Ray told me about this method that I'd never heard of before. You can see that this tenon is too small. But he says, all you got to do is flip the direction of the lathe, and then you use your tool and you sprinkle it like this, and you actually can put wood back on the piece. No, it works. It works. All right, that's just enough. Just enough. You're absolutely right. It doesn't work. Can't put wood back on. So the next step in this, if I were doing it at home, I would take the time to clean up this. This is kind of ugly. The skew sometimes can leave a beautiful surface, but this wood is kind of chippy. But for demonstration purposes, I'm going to go with this. Now it's chippy, not punky. Chippy. You ever turned Purple Heart? Purple Heart is chippy also. So just to ensure that these are square, I'm also going to follow these up with just a little bit on this parting tool. This parting tool is, I think, Larry's parting tool that I bought. All right. That looks square. All right, so now the last step we do on this preparation is to remove the female side, separate the two pieces. All right. Once this tool goes far enough in, it frequently binds up on either of these edges. And so it looks like a catch, but it's really not. It's hitting these sharpened sides. So once I get it low enough, I always just cut it to separate the two. Take a little pressure off the tailstock. That should be enough. Regina, do we have the bar for pushing this out?
Yep. Can you walk that to the camera, please?
Sure. So here's the female. It absolutely looks terrible around here, but it's for demonstration purposes. You know, sandpaper would, my 80 grit gouge would clean that right up, but we're gonna go with,
You want sandpaper?
no. A while ago, I shifted to one-way chucks only, and that's what I use now. I prefer one-way chucks to pretty much everything else. So the size of this makes it easy to use. When I've been doing a lot of these the same size, it's because these two Forstner bits fit very well. The larger one is 1.5 inches. The smaller one is I think 1.25 inches. Yeah, 1.25 inches, which leaves 1/8 of an inch behind those male threads. So I'm going to go about, there's about 1 inch showing right here. So I'm just going to take it down about 1/2 inch, which is just about this part right here. Those of you that are not familiar with Forstner bits, you don't want to go real fast on them. I won't go much above 600, 650 RPM. All right, can we go back to the PowerPoint? So the male thread or the male piece is not gotten hollowed or anything like that. We're not going to basically prepare that for threads until this one is completed, till the threads are cut on this, because that's what you set the depth of your threads on the male side. So now what we do is we take this back off. And we set up the jig. Yes?
The lineup, the one you were showing us where one side was more grout than the other side, is the lineup of those two pieces solely dependent upon the accuracy of your tenons?
Yeah, so you'll see that when I cut the threads, the alignment of the whole threading jig assumes that the two pieces that we're cutting threads into are aligned with the chuck, because that's what I try to align with the bedways, and then I move it in and out. It's going axially with the bedways, and then the cutter sits right here, and I'll set that up in a second. So in the kit that I bought, it's got two threading setups. It's got a 12-inch and a 16-inch. And it has one more if you want if you want 20 threads per inch. I got the two smaller ones. The 12-inch one is the one I use the most. To set this up, you have to calibrate it one time on your lathe. So what I'm doing right here is I've got this in the banjo, and then I'm just aligning this face underneath this set screw. And then earlier, when we were messing with this tool rest, we actually aligned it. And this is how easy it is to align. There's a dimple on the back of this. Do you have a camera over there? On that camera, you can see this dimple right here. And then all you do is line it up with the point on the tool rest, on the live center. There you go. So that makes it, that's aligning the height. It's not aligning the alignment of the tool, okay? It's aligning the height. So the center of this and the chuck, after I mount it back up, is going to be centered on it as well. So then you put on, this is a stop, and the stop's nice. It's got a copper face on it so that it doesn't damage the threads. And then this has a flat, and you align the flat. The other thing that I bought that's kind of convenient for, and you'll see that I really needed it, is I got a longer cutting tool. The normal cutting tool is, I'd say, 2/3 the length of the long one. This piece right here is to advance the chuck into the cutter. So I always use the longer cutter just out of habit. And this cutter, if there's anything that's dangerous on this thing, this cutter is it. So one of the things that Simon Hope talks about is you got to support the chuck. Imagine the chuck's mounted on there, and you're feeding it in and out of this thing. So if you get a finger wobble, this thing is not going to forgive you. So it's dangerous. And the thing is, you turn this up as high as your lathe will go per the instructions. That's how fast it's going. So a little bit dangerous. What's that question? So an important lesson learned was the set screw on here has to be locked in. I was turning it one time and I was supporting it and backing it out, and the chuck I didn't realize was not coming back out. It was unthreading. So, and then it just stripped all the threads that I'd been working on. So it's important that you tighten up that set screw. All right, where are we on the PowerPoint? Yeah, so mounting the cutter on the headstock. Simon's setup, he's got multiple ways of doing it. Imagine you could take a chuck and put it in this inside the chuck. I don't think it'd be accurate enough, as accurate as this device is for mounting that cutter. So that's why I went with this. But he's got a few ways that you can do it with home-built stuff. So I do them both. Inside threads. Yep, right. The female threads I always do first. Now the video that I saw, Ronald Kane actually did his male threads first. I don't think the male threads are as good a choice because you get a better measurement with the female threads, right? So I do the female threads first like he recommends. You mount the chuck on the spindle, tighten the set screw as I talked about. You align the spindle axially with the bedways. It ensures linearity of the cutter. So the way you want to do that is you want it down around here, so it's basically at a point where you can actually start this thing. You have to do all three at the same time. I'm going to go this way, withdrawing the female threads, so I want to make sure that I'm not all the way backed off. I want to make sure that I've got at least enough clicks. You hear these clicks? That's what advances this jig into the cutter. So you got to have enough clicks left to make sure that the cutter comes all the way that it's supposed to for that thread pitch. The different thread pitches use different number of advances. 12 threads use 9 clicks. So at the same time that you're aligning this, you're also setting this up, and you're making sure that you have enough clicks. So I'm going to make sure that I've got at least 9 clicks to 0. 6, 7, 8, 9. All right. So the three things that I'm worried about right now are making sure that I'm close to the cutter, making sure that I've got some gap in here so I've got room to come back and room to go forward. And I'm looking over the edge of my chuck, and I'm looking at the axis of the lathe. And so if it's not in good alignment, I need to be able to measure it. I need to be able to adjust it. But then I have to keep adjusting for this. So I'm just catching the front end and the back end to make sure that it's in line with this. All right. And then I make sure that there's enough room on the back to get this away from the cutter. And then I want to be able to feed it in and then set this stop. Question? Is there a question? Okay.
Just discussing how far off center the cutter is from the center of the cup.
Okay. Yeah.
No, it is the center. It's off center somewhere.
It has to be cutting on the edge. Yeah, it's going to be, yeah, you can't really see it. If you were looking at it from this angle, you'd see that the cutter vertically is in the center, but
Yeah, the closer to you, the further away.
yeah,
Okay. It just had to be, it didn't look like it from here.
yeah. All right, this will be a good time to take a head call. It's 7:30, so as promised. Seven, 8, 9. So I've got 9 clicks. So it's calibrated. So I go back out to the 0 point. Yeah, and so right now it is inside because I need to set it up to make sure that the cutter is touching the wood, just touching it, just skimming it. And that's my 0, all right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use 9 cuts total, or 9 clicks total. I'm going to back this out 4, all right? So I take the cutter out of there, 1, 2, 3, 4. And so now it's ready to go. I'm going to turn the lathe on, spin it all the way up, max speed on this, and then start feeding it. I'll feed it in and feed it back out. Now, I told you earlier about that Thursday meetings that we do every week. Last week, one of our friends in North Carolina, a guy named Terry, he's a big-time threader, and he said one of the things that he does is he lubricates the wood. So Simon Hope uses CA glue at this point. He would spray CA glue in here to strengthen this area. As I said, I can't do that. But I will do some lubrication.
Got a question online.
Yeah. Yeah, so the problem with using the banjo is if this isn't aligned to that. So basically, the banjo can be anywhere, and as long as this is aligned. So I always just put this on the banjo, wherever the banjo is, and then I loosen it, move it around so that this is in line. So absolutely, if you had a jig that you could make to make sure that this is 100% in line with the banjo, then you could just use a roofer square and make it at 90 degrees. Yep.
What about using it, aligning it to the chuck? I mean,
That's what I do, is I align,
I mean, you can eyeball it,
I eyeball it.
but is there a mechanical way you can?
I suppose you could build a jig that would drop down here, like have a little long trough, and it would fit down inside here. And so if the trough wasn't in line with the chuck, you would know that it's not in line with the ways. That would work. Yep, I haven't built that, but that was spur of the moment engineer kind of. All right, any other questions? I gotta lubricate this. All I did was I took some paraffin and melted it in hot water kind of bath, a pot inside hot water, and then I added mineral oil to it. And it's just to lubricate it. I do.
How smooth was it before you started? Pretty smooth in there, the Forstner bit?
The Forstner bit leaves a really good smooth surface in there. Simon Hope does not use a Forstner bit, and he uses scrapers. So he's got a special scraper all carved so that it bleeds off to the right. So it's a straight cutter, goes in, and then he hollows it out with I think a spindle gouge, and then uses this special scraper to make sure that it's absolutely in line. I'm cheating with the Forstner bit. Say again?
Like you put it all the way out here, and then you start it in again, can't it
No, because what's forcing the start is the 12 pitch on the lead screw here. So as long as this chuck is always locked into that lead screw, it's always going to start contact at the exact same spot, which is why I was saying earlier, you got to make sure that this chuck is locked down on there, because otherwise, just like you said, it could start anywhere and screw up the threads.
So Kevin, we're starting, you make the cut from the top, go all the way to the bottom, back it out, and then one click.
What I was doing on mine was, because the threads were cutting well, I was doing 2 clicks. So I did 9 clicks total. And the way I'll typically, if the wood is a really nice wood, like maple or something like that, I'll do 4 clicks, 2, 2, and then 1, all right? And that gives me the 9, all right? So the female, you always end up doing 9. And that, let me take it out of the chuck and then, or take the chuck out of this. Exactly. Right. Because the different woods, without having that CA glue on there, you have to be gentle with it. There are some woods that are totally grabby. Like if I were to do that one that I showed you before, that Bacote, if I were to do that again, I would do 1 click at a time, lubricating after each one. But the lazy person in me says, I'm never going to do Bacote again. All right, so because if we had time, I would want to make sure that the male and female threads, the male and female grain structure on this align after I've cut the threads. I will leave this in the chuck. But so I don't know if you can see the threads very well in there. The threads do not look that bad. I'll pass it around later on after we've done the male part. So the next thing we do is we take the male threads, put it in the other chuck, spin this way down.
You mentioned earlier you had 2 separate threads that determine the stationary, like a 12 or something.
Right, a 12 and a 16. I've got a 12, a 16, and then Simon Hope sells a 20.
Those threads, they determine,
Right,
they determine the thread strength.
that's right, because this lead screw is turning the chuck and advancing it in that same thread pitch. Whereas I didn't have the set screw tight on that one time, and so it was unscrewing, but this is a 1/8 pitch. Right, it was just to hold the work. So as it was unthreading, it screwed up all the threads because this was backing out at a different thread pitch than the chuck was. So it messed up the threads. Yeah, you got to lock it in. So now you go back to the male threads, and if you want, you can hollow it out with the smaller Forstner bit. And you want to make sure that this is all the way down. Right, because that 1/4 inch different in diameter ends up with an 1/8 inch different in radius. So you end up with 1/8 inch backing the male threads on this side. All right? So now the next thing to do is you take the female threads, you measure them with a metric, and you add 0.22 to that. And that's going to be your thread That's going to be how low a tenon you're going to cut right here for the male threads.
Only threads are inside, right?
These female threads I cut first, and that's what I'm measuring. I'm just measuring tip to tip on the female threads.
What I'm saying is all the threads, both male and female, are inside. Yes.
No, the male threads are on the outside. Yeah, once it's closed. No, the male threads are on the outside. And the way I do this, Simon Hope teaches it. Here is what the measurement is. It's 38 millimeter. So all you do is you zero it, loosen it, add 0.22. It's so sensitive to get that third digit. There we go. And then you're basically getting an idea. This wood is so hard, I don't want to go to mark it like I normally would with maple. But that's what Simon Hope does. He takes his calipers, gets this spun up, and then he goes, wink. But you can see this is wobbling a little bit. Not good. Not good. I would correct that if I weren't doing a demo and it's 8:10 already. But so we take this back off. Right here. Right, exactly, in the chuck. All right, so now what I'm going to do is hollow this out, the male side. And again, I'll just take it down about to within half an inch. So I'll take it 2 inches, which is about to the base of there. Are there any questions as we go? So now we're back to putting the threads the area where I want the threads to be the right size for that female thread so that they're going to fit inside. And one of the lessons learned that we talked about is don't make your male threads longer than your female threads. So my female threads are 15 millimeters. So I'm not going to go much beyond 10. And 10 millimeters is just about the bedan. Just about the width of the bedan. Aaron. And now I got to sneak up on this, because if we mess up this cut, then your threads, they're sloppy. They're not good. Come in close. All right. What's that? That came from the threads on the female, and then from the book, you add 2.2 millimeters. So that's what I'm trying for, is to get this 2.2 millimeters greater than the diameter, the inner diameter of the thread pitch. That way, when I cut into it, those threads that I'm cutting into this on the outside will fit into the threads, the female threads. Outside, greater than the diameter, right? Right, it is. So now, I go right back to the beginning, take this off, put the cutter back on here, put the jig on here, feed it in, and we're right back to that. Do you guys want to see that, or do you want to see the other examples of stuff that I've done? Let's go back to the PowerPoint. So the spindle choice drives the thread pitch. So I've got, like I said, the 12, the 16, and the 20 are available. There you go. Use climb cuts. So if we had plenty of time, I would show you on the male threads. What I do is I approach it from this side, but I take it and cut the threads backing out. So it's a climb cut. The cutter is on here, and I'm going to have this turned around, and I'm going to use this to go into the cutter. As the cutter's coming up, it's going down. So it's a climb cut. So on the females, to get the climb cut, you go inward. On the male threads, to get the climb cut, you go outwards. All right? And then, as you saw when I cut the female threads, you use the stop on the spindle to set the depth. And then you guys saw I was holding the chuck as it was going in and out. And then once the female threads are cut, just like you saw here, next slide, you add 2.2 for the 12 TPI, and you cut the male spigot to that dimension. Does everybody understand that? Just add 2.2 to the height of the female threads. And then the next thing you do is you make a relief cut. And I showed you on one of these over there why you have to do that. If you don't have a relief cut in that, as the male threads are cut on this thing, the female thread can't go past that. But if you've got a relief cut in here that's cut all the way at the back, the female threads can go past the bottom of the male threads and actually make the two faces meet. They'll bottom out. All right? So now I would do that relief cut, reinstall the cutter, put the chuck back onto the jig, and I'd cut the male threads. Just like you saw the female threads, it's the clicks. You have to calibrate it, you have to align it, make sure it's touching. All right? Next. So, I'm going to see if I can show you on this, the grain of this. This has a little bloodline coming through it. I'm not sure what it's called, like curly maple. Is that curl lines? Curl lines? You can see it's on either side. When I initially turned that, this was where it was. The 1 and this mark were aligned. Okay. The 1 and this mark were aligned. So my curl line, which is right here, yeah, this camera's not showing it very well. Well, there you can see it. All right. They were not aligned. So what you do is you chuck this back up, the female side, put it back into there, exactly, and you just shave a little bit off the face. You can't do it with the male threads. It doesn't allow you to go any further in. You actually have to go further together, and you can only do that by cutting it off the female end, right? And so you're just doing it with a scraper, and you do it a little bit at a time and mark it so that you know, so that you develop a feel for how long you're holding the scraper on there and what kind of rotation you get with this. And then it'll line up. And then finally, you get the pieces to align. That's how you do the alignment. Next slide. All right, these are the sources of info. I told you the 2 videos on YouTube for Kane. He's a Norwegian guy. And then Simon Hope is a British guy that actually sells the jig. Next slide. So my father passed in May of last year, and my siblings said, hey, we need to make him an urn. And so I had some spalted maple, big block sitting there. It was about 12 inches tall, and it was 8 by 8. So I said, that's perfect. I'm going to use that. And then inside of it, it was nothing. So it was kind of disappointing. So I said, oh, I'll make my own spalt. And I used watercolors to make a spalted piece. This threads on, next slide. So that threads onto this piece. This is the neck I made. This is the vessel, the urn itself. And then inside here, it's got female threads here to thread onto this. And then it's got a little cap to hold his religious mementos. My dad was a Catholic. And so I put another cap inside the cap to hold his ring for my mom and his Christopher cross, St. Christopher's cross in there. And it worked well. Next. This was turning that big cap. So outside threads and inside threads on this piece. Next slide. So this is, I wasn't sure I was going to get permission from my wife to bring that. That's hers. So I had a slide in there. Next. Any questions? Sorry it ran so long.
What kind of price tag you get on that thing?
I think, don't quote me, but I think it's like 4 and change. And then shipping is probably, shipping is probably another 50. But I never had kids. I was a submariner. I had some money to spare. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Let me get your mic here.